Hi, this is Donovan Stone with Dreamtsoft, and this video is intended to be a quick start on how to build your own application, or what we call bundle, on the Dreamtsoft platform. So initially, when you log into your Dreamtsoft instance, you'll see a screen that should look just like this, and this is your bundle home screen. So as you build out more and more applications or install more and more applications or bundles, you'll see them appear as icons. Out of the box, we provide the system bundle. And if you click on the system bundle, you'll see it's essentially the shared elements that all other bundles will use. So it's kind of the foundational elements, whether it's the user table or connected data services or even scheduled jobs that run. These are elements that all bundles can use. So you'll see that screen when you initially log in. But what we want to do is create our own bundle today. So I can click Bundle Setup, and you'll see three options. These three options, really quickly, the first is to install a bundle from a store. That's the Dreamtsoft store. As we build out more production-ready applications, you'll be able to install those. You can also install the bundle from a URL. So we have a pre-built GitHub integration that allows you to push any changes and pull any changes from not just GitHub, but any Git repository. We use GitHub out of the box, but any Git repository you can use. And then, of course, there's create a new bundle. That's what we're going to do today. I'm going to create an expense management application. So just name it expense. You'll now see a new expense icon on the bundle homepage. So I have a new application. I can click into it, and it's going to take me into my application. Now, I don't have any elements in here yet, so I'm going to need to build out first my data model and then configure the UI a little bit and then add a home page. And in order to do that, I need to go to the management section of my newly created bundle. So by clicking the expense icon here, I can go down to my management page. And if you prefer keyboard shortcuts, you can hit Option-C on a Mac or Alt-C on the Windows machine, and then that will take you to the same page. So from here, this is where you can configure your newly created bundle. You'll see your options on the left-hand side. You can do things like simply changing the icon or changing the color of the icon on that bundle page. And then once I save that, that will be stored. And then you have many left menu items, including security, creating new pages, custom components. But right now, I want to create what would be my data model. So I need to create a table, and I need to create some fields on that table. So in Dreamtsoft, our table is actually considered a bucket. And the reason we do that is because we may have other data sources that are not just a table. Dreamtsoft has a very unique ability to connect very easily to external data sources, whether they're databases or cloud APIs, and those will need to display the data in something we call a bucket. But in this case, I'm going to create an actual table on our database, but it will still reside in a bucket. So I'm going to click plus and create an expense table. And by selecting the type record, that's actually going to create this table in our Postgres database. So when I click save, I now have my bucket that's saved, and I want to add some fields. So the first will be a number field. That's going to be an iterating field. So I'll have a unique identifier for each one. And that's going to be a number slot with a prefix of EXP. Next will be description. We'll make that a big string, and that, of course, is for many characters. The next will be the user that submitted it. And what we want to do here is make it a choice. So the choice field has two real options. I can either manually type in or hard code choices. So if you did that for low, medium, high, 1, 2, 3, etc., you could do that. But if you wanted to reference another table, you just select the bucket that you want to reference. And I'm going to go down to the user, and I'm also going to make it a type ahead so I can easily type and search. But now I have a reference to my user table. Next will be, amount for the amount of the expense, and we'll make that a decimal. And then the final slot we're just going to call state, and this is a unique slot for Dreamtsoft, and we actually have a lifecycle state, and that basically manages the process that a piece of work goes through. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But now that I have all of my slots or my fields on my expense bucket, I'm going to save that. And this is the definition of the bucket, but if I click this icon here, this will actually take me to the list of the bucket's data. So it's going to take me to a list view, and it does, but as you can see, it's not configured. It doesn't know what columns I want to display. So if I want to configure some of the UI, I can simply do that by going to this pencil in the upper right-hand corner, And now I have access to editing the page, which I could click on here, and the components on the page, which is this list component. So by clicking on this list component, I now have some configuration capability, but what I want to do is drag some columns over, like number, the newly created state, the user, the description, and the amount. It defaults with this ref ID, but I don't need that. It's going to be nonsense, so I'm just going to drop that over here. And now I have my column set up. Now I can click this plus symbol to insert a new record into my expense table. But just like the columns, it doesn't know what fields I want to show. So I can do the exact same thing by going over to my layout editor, going to the detail section or details component. And now I can drag and drop my slots over here. And I'm going to split this up with a 2-column. So it's easier, better formatted. Say number and state, user and amount, and then finally description down below. So now I have the form to be able to input the data, and I can go through and say, you know what, Colin actually submitted this, had lunch with Tom, maybe it was $10. But I don't have any states in here. There's no results, and that's because I haven't built out my process yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this, even though it didn't have a state in there. And I'm just going to save and go back. And you can see there's no life cycles. In order for me to build out the life cycles, I'm going to go back to my bundle management screen. Like I said before, life cycles are pretty unique, and the nice thing about Dreamtsoft is we recognize every piece of work has to go through a workflow, and we give you a fairly straightforward console to be able to build out the process or the workflow for this life cycle. So I'm going to choose the bucket of expense I just created. And now I'm going to go through and click the plus sign and add each life cycle for each piece of work. So from here, I'm going to say that, the initial state's going to be new. Then you submit it for approval. And then after it's submitted, maybe it's approved or it's rejected. And then once it gets to approved or rejected, it could be complete, could be paid. And then finally, maybe you have a canceled. So now I have all the possible states of this new expense, but I want to configure how it can move or flow through this process. So initially, you can click this down arrow. This shows you your initial transitions. So when you create a new record, the available options when you're first creating it. And then as you click on each one of these states, you can pick how it can transition or what the next state is. So if I'm new, I can only go over to submitted for approval or maybe canceled. Once it's submitted, I can go to approved or rejected or canceled. After it's approved, maybe it's complete or canceled. Same thing with rejected, it can be complete or canceled. And then complete or canceled could be end states. If I want to build some workflow, I know that when it's submitted for approval, I need an approval. So I'm going to check this approval box, click on this hierarchy icon, and now I can quickly build out my approval process. So I could select a group if I had a group of individuals that I knew would approve every time, like these administrators, or I can use dynamic data from the record and say, you know what, I know that user slot, he has a manager. So, he or she has a manager. So I'm going to go through here and say, well, give me that user's manager. Click OK. Now I have user.manager. That's actually going to be my dynamically populated approval process. So it's just going to go down here. Now I have an approval ready. Someone can look at that. And then once it's approved, I'm going to say this needs to be approved. And we'll switch over to that state. Do the exact same thing for rejected. Oops. So there's my approved, rejected, perfect. Connect the dots, and now I've got a very basic workflow. So this is an approval workflow, but you will see this workflow editor throughout the Dreamtsoft platform. You can do it when you're building actions or you're actually creating buttons on forms. You can also do it here in this transitional workflow. So these workflows are basically moving out of specific states. You can click the gears and you can go ahead and send out notifications, run some scripts, or add some schema tags. And we'll actually have a future video discussing what schema tags are, a very powerful way to create dynamic schema. But for now, I have my approval workflow. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my bucket, and I'm going to click this icon to go back to my list of records. And now I can create a new expense, select a user, and then say, you know what, that was a $10 cup of coffee. I save that. And now it went from new state, but you can see because it's abiding by those transitions, I can only go submitted for approval or canceled. You know, and I can save this still as new and say, you know what, I'm not sure if that, you know, copy of, or that coffee was $10. But one of the biggest issues with expenses is, of course, I need to attach things. So I can go to my details section here and, oops, excuse me. I can go to my page and configure my page and say, you know what? I actually need the attachments to be down below. And I can view it as boxes or I can view it as a list. I'll just actually make it a list here and I can click OK. And now I have my expense up above, but then I can attach my images down below. So, you know, I'll attach this Dreamtsoft logo. There it is. Now I can save that as new. And if everything's good, I can submit that. So it gives you capability not only to configure the detailed components, but you can create your own pages and add multiple components there. So I've created my data model, I've configured my list, I've configured my form, but now I need an easy way to be able to get to this. So when my sales reps come in and submit expenses, they can intuitively know where to go. So currently I have my home. This is my bundle page. So I have my system bundle, my expense bundle, but when I click on the expense, it takes me back to this kind of blank home page. So I'm just going to create this page here. And if I wanted to, I could actually go into bundle management and I could go down to pages and I could create a new page from this view. But we provide, you know, these shortcuts and it's a lot easier just to create the page from here. And now I'm just going to grab a simple navigator over, drop it off. It's going to look a lot like the bundle menu options. I'm going to make them circles as well, just for consistency. And now I'm just going to drag a new list over and say, this is my expenses. You know, I can make it green again. I can add a unique icon in there. So if it's expenses, make it $1. And I could put a condition on there if I wanted it just to be open expenses. I could say, you know, whatever the state is open. Actually, I need to point it at the right bucket first. That's why I wasn't getting my condition values in there. And that's where you can, you know, go in and just use your condition builder where it's saying, you know what, where the state is new or the state is not complete, etc. And you can go through and build that way. But for now, I'm just going to save that as my home page, hit OK. You know, going all the way back to my login screen, I now have my system bundle, my expense bundle. I have a home page here. I can add other charts to that. I can make it look different with a left side navigator if I need, but right now I've just got a basic list. I click on that and now I have the ability to go through and say, okay, I can create a new expense, or if I want to go back, I can edit current expenses. So this was the quick start and able to give you a little understanding of how to create your, once again, your data model, configure the UI elements as far as forms and lists and fields, as well as adding some simple home pages. Hopefully this is enough information to get you started. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us either via our website or via our Slack channel. And for a more in-depth explanation of some of these elements, look for our future webinars or other videos in our library. Thank you very much and happy building.